Hello, good morning, class. Today, I'm going to discuss with you Chapter 5, How Society is Organized. So, relationships and patterns of interactions become institutions the moment they start to be governed by formal and informal agreements or by strong traditional norms. Now, all societies are organized to provide protection, law and order, economic security, and a sense of belongingness for their members. Next. So, are going to discuss three modules under organization of societies. First, we'll talk about the groups in society, cultural, social, and political institutions, and then social and political stratification. Now, by the way, for Module 1, that specifically addresses the definition of a group and its different types, as well as how they compare with one another. Societies are composed of small groups that are built on social class, personal interest, or common goals. There are also two types of groups within a society according to Charles Horton Cooley, which is primary and secondary group. Now, under these groups, they're actually you know other groups as well that we can consider, such as in groups and out groups. Later, we'll discuss those. But by the way, for now, let's move on to the next slide. So, like what they said, we have primary groups, secondary groups, in groups, and out groups. But let me ask these questions first. In your own words, can you differentiate a primary group from a secondary group? You may keep your answer for yourselves for now. But I think most of you will say primary groups um, includes family, friends. It actually depends upon you. Who do you consider as your primary group? And next, what characterize an in-group versus out-group? So from the word itself, if it is in-group, so there's a feeling of self-belongingness. And if it is out-group, meaning they do not belong in a certain group. Let's dig in more about this on the next slides. Next. Okay, so it says here that coming together is the beginning. We have here peer group and family group. When individuals aggregate physically in a given space, they do not necessarily make a social group. They are just collection of warm bodies who happen to be together in one space or who may happen to share a set of common characteristics. But when relationships starts to go beyond mere co-presence or mere co-category, a group starts to emerge. This situation then suggests that groups are not just a collection of beings. They have some common interests that necessitates interaction with each other across time and space. So, it is really important here to distinguish social groups from two related concepts, social categories and social aggregates. Let's define both of these terms. Social aggregates. It is a simple collection of people who happen to be together in a particular place but do not significantly interact or identify with one another. Falling between a social category and a social group is what we call social aggregate. So, for example, the crowd at a sporting event and the audience at the movie or play are common examples of social aggregates. So, you know, um, these collections of people are not a social category because the people are together physically, and they are also not a group because they do not really interact and do not have a common identity unrelated to being in the crowd or audience at the moment. So, meaning they don't have that bond or deep connection with each other. It's just like when you go at McDonald's or Jollibee or any fast food. When you enter the place, you do not really know the people there. You're not really connected with each other. So, therefore, we can consider that as social aggregates. Next, we have group. So when we say group, it is a collection of individuals who have regular contact and frequent interaction, mutual influence, common feeling of belongingness, and work together to achieve a common set of goals. It is where people have the chance to interact with other people and think of themselves as belonging together. You know, the group exists as long as individuals are interested in belonging to it. Although groups are collections of individuals, they may differ in terms of what binds these people together. Just like, for example, you as a student, you belong in one section. For example, ICT Compassion. You are placed there in one room because you belong in one section. Now, when you leave the room, okay, you go home, you still consider them as your group, your classmates, because still at the end of the day, for as long as you haven't graduated yet, you still belong in that section, which is ICT Compassion. Now, for example, a family can be considered as a group, but it is different from a peer group or an interest group. By the way, peer group means barkada. Sila yung mga friends mo that you have a very deep connection. You have this strong bonding, strong connection. Now, the difference with with a peer group to family is, you have this physical closeness, but in the quality of feeling, one, I mean, for peer group, kasi, these are the set of people wherein you can share your problems. Sometimes you can share anything to them, because sometimes you cannot share everything to your family, but it's not in general, okay? Because vice versa, there are people who consider family as their primary group, wherein they can share everything, their problems, their sentiments, and so on and so forth. It depends on how you look at, at a group, or how you look at your friends, how you look at your family, if you consider them as your primary or your secondary group. Next, okay, according to Muzaffar Sherry, okay, he proposed to define a social group as a number of individuals interacting with each other with respect to the following motives. Okay, we have common motives and goals, an accepted division of labor, established status relationships, accepted norms and values with reference to matters relevant to the group, and then development of accepted sanctions if when norms were respected or violated. Okay, so there's really a reason behind why we are put into a social group. So may reason behind bakit tayo nagkakasama-sama. So sometimes we come into one group because we have the same motives. We have the same goal. For example, you an ICT student. So definitely you might be placed in one specific building wherein all ICT students are there. Same goes with UM students, STEM students, TVL students, and so on. Now, for the second one, yeah, there is actually an accepted division of labor in our society. For example, if you finish a certain degree, if you finish a certain profession, definitely you will be placed in one institution wherein you can apply that degree that you have finished. If you finished education, you might be placed in a teaching field, like in a public school. Or for example, if you finish hotel and restaurant management, you might be placed in a hotel and restaurant to apply your profession, and so on. Established relationships. So, for example, for Barkada, so for sure you've been together for how many months, how many years. So there's really an established status relationship. So that's why you are together. That's what binds you. Accepted norms and values. There are different groups that are bind together because they share the common values. They share a common norms. For example, yung mga tribo, they are together because they have the same practices, they have the same culture. Same goes with religious groups. For example, for Catholics, for Iglesia ni Cristo, for Jehovah's Witnesses, they have different beliefs. Now, It depends upon the people, of course, whose group they want to join in. Okay. Um, it depends upon which institution or which religious group is acceptable for them. Next, development of accepted sanctions if and where norms were respected or violated. When we say sanctions, it is actually a other term for penalty, consequences. Okay, so if you violated certain rules, so there's a certain group of people who does that, who facilitates, who mandates laws, yung mga batas in our country. So, nagsasama-sama sila, of course, okay, to develop these sanctions, policy, and laws. Next, according to Charles Horton Cooley, primary group is a small social group whose members share personal and lasting relationships. So, members of the primary, they usually spend great deal of time together. They engage in a wide range of activities and leisure time together and feel they have this feeling that they know each other very well. For example, nga, you can consider family, friends, okay, as your primary group. So another example, we have love relationships, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, okay, you can consider them as your primary group. So anyway, we have here family, of course, these are your parents, your siblings, yung mga kapatid mo, and then friends, okay? Because you spend a lot of time with them, especially at school. You share your personal stories. You simply enjoy each other's company, okay? And then for family, you have this you're connected to them. I mean, for a lifetime, okay? But there are other people who have a broken family, so they may not consider their family as their primary group because sometimes they feel that sense of belongingness with their friends. Like what I said, it depends upon the people, upon the person you're speaking with, who they consider as their primary group. Next, we have okay, love relationships. A couple in love relationship is first brought together as a result of a mutual physical or emotional attraction. They spend a significant amount of time together, whether that involves learning about one another or collectively sharing new experiences. Secondary groups. These can be small or large clusters of people who have a mutually shared purpose, often aiming to complete tasks. So it sometimes involves weak emotional and interpersonal ties compared to primary group. So for example, we have your coworkers or place of employment. For example, you work in a hospital and you're a doctor. So you don't necessarily need to know each and every names of the employees that works there in the hospital. Okay. So meaning you don't have that strong bond connection with them. So you can just call them your coworkers. Okay. So therefore they're considered your secondary groups. Unless you turn these coworkers to your as your peer group or barkada, then there will be a certain bond that will happen school and class, okay? For example, at Capas National High School. So you can consider the students of Capas National High School as your secondary group. Again, not unless you convert those students as your peer groups or barkada, then you will have a sense of belongingness to project group. So maybe your group mates, or if you belong in a society, so they are your secondary group. Next, out group, oh, I mean in group. So in group is a group wherein people feel that they are part of the social group. So there's a feeling of belongingness. Halimbawa, yung mga friends mo, barkada mo. So they are the ones you can share your personal story. Okay, and there's a there's a sense of respect, loyalty within the group. So a good example of this is yung mga sa fraternity. So they have this brotherhood. So there's a sense of belongingness. And sila yung ready na rumesbak sa'yo whenever you need help. Okay? And then out group. We have, it's okay. This is a complete opposite of in-group. So a social group with which an individual does not identify to be a part of it. So one feels antagonism and contempt for these groups. For example, Asians versus Americans, Filipino versus Chinese when it comes to culture. For gender naman, we have male and female, teenagers versus senior citizens, Christians versus Muslims. So, there's a certain boundary between them, and we can really differentiate them with each other, because definitely Asians are different from Americans when it comes to color, when it comes to our culture, when it comes to our practices. It's totally different. Okay, under social groups and under in-groups and out-groups, we have in-group favoritism and intergroup aggression. So, in-group favoritism is a pattern of favoring members of one's in-group over out-group members. So, example, in a job, so managers trust people who are from their same race compared to other races. Ayan. So there's a sense of like, discrimination then. So parang sort of, okay, but usually this can be observed nowadays, no? Halimbawa kapag same barrio kayo, same lugar kayo, so more likely you trust, no? Yung mga from same place mo. Unlike yung sa mga far places na or ibang ano sila, ibang probinsya sila. So you have this sense of trust talaga dun sa mga kaano mo, parang kabaryo mo, kalugar mo. Halimbawa yung mga Kapampangan, no? So since all of you speaks Kapampangan and may ibang mahahalo na Tagalog, Ilocano, no? So more likely yung mga pakikisamahan mo is yung mga Kapampangan, because you're used to that language, you're used to speaking Kapampangan rather than speaking in Ilocano, because you don't know, no? Maybe they're backstabbing you, maybe they're saying something bad against you. So you would rather trust people na lang na alam mong kababayan mo. So next we have intergroup aggression, wherein in groups try to harm another person because they feel that person is part of the outgroup. So, for example, sports fans try to shout at people who are not fans of their team. Okay, so I actually watched. I was able to watch a video from Facebook before. So, very fanatic siya nitong football um, group na to. And then, they're trying to bash yung other groups na fans nung other football group, no? Which is actually bad. Because we have to support one another, and regardless no kung may specific team ka na sinusupport. So it actually reflects kasi no kung what type of personality you have. So you have to be sport, no? If ever man na natalo yung favorite na group mo, you have to accept it na merong mas ibang group na mas magaling doon sa group na pinili mo. So you don't have to bash yung mismong group na nananalo, of course. Okay? So that's intergroup aggression. Next. Outgroup derogation naman is an outgroup wherein an outgroup is perceived as being threatening to the members of an in-group. Example, gang wars. Groups consider the other group as threat to them. Yan. So, or yung mga fraternity din. Although I said earlier, merong parang brotherhood na tinuturing nga. No? May turingan. But when it comes to gang wars, kapag isa dun sa member nila yung kinalaban or inape, inagrabyado ng ibang group, definitely magre-respect yung mga yan. So that is what we call an out-group derogation. Next, reference group. So is a group to which we compare ourselves. It serves as a standard to which we measure our behaviors and attitudes. So used in order to guide our behavior and attitudes and help us to identify social norms. Anyway, let me just give you here some examples or types of reference groups. We have informal reference groups. It is based on the group's shared interests and goals. Example, your family and your friends. So members react on a personal level. So they have this right to confront you if you're having some. personal problems, affiliation, or some conflicts with other people. So they have the right to interfere, to talk to you. No, they won't. You cannot tell to them that sino ka ba, okay? Because they are your family and they are your friends. Okay. Next, we have formal reference groups. Have a specific goal or mission. For examples, our employee union. So, formal reference groups, meron tayong tinatawag na mga kooperatiba. So, employee union. Okay. So, ang main role kasi ng kooperatiba is to make sure na yung may certain na parang pinaglalaban sila about dun sa rights ng mga employee. Halimbawa, yung mababang pasahod. So, itong mga kooperatiba na to, so they gather, no? May mga representative per different department ng isang kumpanya, and then they share dun sa higher body, okay, dun sa higher management kung ano man yung needs ng mga nasa mababang laylayan or yung mga empleyado. Next, membership preference groups. Groups that are in agreement within regards to attitude, norms, and behaviors. So, membership preference. So, from the word itself, there's a certain membership for you to be able to join that specific group. So, like group clubs and so on and so forth. Disclaimant reference groups, groups we do not agree with in regards to the attitude, norms, and behavior. So anyway, from the word itself, we do not agree with in regards to the attitude, norms, and behavior. So these are other groups, okay? Wherein we do not totally agree dun sa mga pinaglalaban nila. Halimbawa, during election, there are party list na naglilitawan. So they have this certain advocacy. Sometimes we do not agree to what they're fighting for. So we consider those as disclaimant reference groups. Next, aspirational reference group. A group an individual does not belong to but aspires to become a part of in the future. It's what you aspire, okay? So for example, you want to become a part of Capas High School's performing arts. So you aspire that group. So you want to be part of it. So what will you do to be part of that group? So mag-audition ka. So magta-try ka. Syempre, no, maging part of that group. You will impress them, no? So usually itong mga aspirational reference group, a lot of people look up to them kasi they are already established, no? And more likely, sila yung mga famous group na tinuturing dun sa lugar ninyo or sa institution ninyo. Next, we have dissociative reference group, a group an individual doesn't belong to and disapproves of in regards to attitudes, norms, and behaviors. So ito almost the same siya dun sa kanina. Okay? Yung sa disclaimant reference groups, no? Yes. A group wherein you do not agree with kung ano yung mga pinaglalaban nila. Okay. So we're down to last two slides. We have here social network. So when we say social network, it is a theoretical construct useful in the social sciences to study relationships between individuals, groups, organizations, or even entire societies. So we have here types or levels of analysis. We have micro, the smallest level of analysis of social networks. Explain that a social network typically starts with an individual. So we have here micro level divided into four levels. Dyadic, which is actually starts with two individuals. Triadic from the word tria, okay, three, starts with three individuals. The actor, an individual in their social settings. Subset may focus on distance and reachability. Cliques, cohesive subgroups, or other group actions or behavior. Next, we have meso. This level of analysis begins with the population size that falls between the micro and macro levels. Examples are organizations, group of people that has distributive tasks for a collective goal. Anyway, when we say micro means small and macro means big or huge. Scale-free networks, a network whose degree distributions follows a proper law. A random network with degree distribution. Test would be macro, generally traces the outcomes of interactions such as economic and other resource transfer interactions over a large population. So, as we can see from the previous discussions, groups may influence their members in a variety of ways, from their thinking to their actual behaviors. Sometimes violent behaviors and certain forms of biases result. With this, we can appreciate the insight that groups are part of our social psyche, you know, in thoughts and in actions. So it really depends upon you which groups you want to be part of it, to be part of with. Okay, so that's it for this module. So I hope you were able to finish this the presentation, and there's more a presentation to come. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much and have a good day. Goodbye.